I didn't owe HOA Karen anything, and the moment I told her no, she decided Christmas was the hill she was going to die on. There was no misunderstanding, no confusion, no miscommunication. She demanded gifts for her kids like I was her personal wallet, and when I refused, she tried to turn my life into a spectacle with flashing lights and police reports. The first time she said I owed her children presents, she didn't say it like a joke. She said it like a bill was due and she was the collector. And I knew right then I was being set up for a lesson in humiliation she thought I was too scared to resist. I didn't bow, I didn't apologize. And that's when she showed me exactly how far she was willing to go to feel powerful. Before we move forward, drop a comment, where are you watching from? And what time is it right now? The story didn't begin quietly. It began with the kind of entitlement that rots neighborhoods from the inside, the kind of arrogance that grows when people get a little clipboard, a small title, and suddenly believe they own the lives of everyone around them. HOA. Karen had convinced herself that the holidays revolved around her family, her children, her expectations, and that anyone who refused was an enemy to be corrected. She didn't ask for donations. She didn't suggest kindness. She dictated tribute. And when tribute didn't arrive fast enough, she sharpened her smile into a threat. I watched her turn Christmas into a weapon, wrapping manipulation in tinsel and fake cheer, while already planning the punishment for anyone who dared to ignore her wish list. I didn't just say no to presents. I said no to the entire fantasy she built where she acted like royalty, and the rest of us existed to perform loyalty. The moment the word no left my mouth, she stopped pretending to be festive and started acting like a dictator who had just been challenged in public. She hated that more than anything. My refusal wasn't about toys. It was about control she thought she owned, and suddenly realized she didn't. That's when the real story began. Because HOA Karen doesn't de-escalate. She escalates loudly, aggressively, and with every ounce of borrowed power she thinks the letters HOA give her. This didn't explode out of nowhere. HOA Karen had been building toward this for years, brick by brick, rule by rule, glare by glare, until she convinced herself she was the axis our neighborhood spun around. She slid into the HOA board like it was a throne room, volunteering just long enough to gather power and then using that power like a hobby. She liked the sound of authority in her mouth. She liked the fear in people's eyes when envelopes from the HOA appeared on their door. She called it order. Everyone else called it easier to just comply. She fined people for harmless decorations, scolded adults like children in community emails, and treated bylaws like scripture she alone could interpret. People stopped fighting, not because she was right, but because they were tired. That is what she mistook for respect. I didn't move here to kneel. I moved here to live. That difference bothered her from the start. She marks people who don't bow. She watches them. And when December came, she saw her chance to finally put me in the position she wanted. Public submission. She disguised obligation as community kindness, presented her children as a charitable cause, and announced that refusing to fund their gifts was equivalent to attacking the spirit of the neighborhood. She counted on guilt. She counted on shame. What she didn't count on was someone looking her in the eye and saying no without flinching. That refusal stripped the illusion. She wasn't a caring leader anymore. She was just a bully with paperwork and a fragile ego that couldn't survive resistance. And when ego-drunk people feel threatened, they don't reflect. They retaliate. The HOA under her control wasn't a community organization anymore. It was a weapon she polished daily. She used policy the way other people use fists. Violations became intimidation tools. Meetings became performances. The board became an audience she stacked with people too exhausted to argue. She didn't need real authority when fear did the job just as well. People paid fees they didn't owe just to stop the emails. People changed decorations they loved just to avoid another confrontation on their doorstep. That's what abuse looks like when it hides behind stationery and titles. She sold her behavior as protecting property values, but what she loved protecting most was her sense of power. Christmas magnified it. She declared that since she spent the year serving the community now owed her children gifts as repayment. She said it with a straight face, like tribute to royalty. It wasn't generosity to her, it was tax. When I refused to participate in her fantasy, she didn't see one neighbor declining. She saw her authority fracture in public. That was unforgivable to her. So she turned to the only thing she thought bigger than herself. Flashing lights and badges. She thought calling the cops would rebuild her throne. When the officers arrived, she launched straight into her story, loud, tear-streaked, full of scripted outrage about how I had threatened her and ruined Christmas for her children. She pointed at me like she was casting a spell. Except spells don't work on body cams. The officers listened, then they asked questions, then they watched footage. My cameras, neighbor recordings, the video of her screaming on my driveway about what I owed her. The moment she stepped over my property line and began tearing into packages she believed she had a right to control. She didn't expect the truth to play out in front of her with timestamps. She tried to talk over it. She tried to change the story mid-sentence. You could see the realization dawning in her eyes that this time, narrative wasn't hers to command. Proof doesn't argue. It just plays. The officers stopped looking at me like a suspect and started looking at her like a problem. Her confidence drained out of her face in slow motion. She kept insisting she was right, while the evidence showed exactly what she had become. Someone willing to use law enforcement to punish a neighbor for disobedience. And when the cuffs appeared, they weren't for me. The collapse wasn't dramatic screaming. It was quieter and far more devastating. It was the moment she realized nobody in that circle believed her anymore. Neighbors who once nodded to avoid conflict now stared at her without fear. The police didn't rush to validate her. The board members stopped defending her. Her power had always depended on people accepting the story she told about herself. Responsible leader, protector of standards, voice of the community. That story dissolved in the glow of patrol car lights and recorded evidence. She tried one last time to command the moment, lifting her chin, telling everyone she would handle this. She didn't. The officers guided her to the car while she searched the crowd for the deference she used to own. She didn't find it. She found silence. And silence is the sound of a throne collapsing. I didn't retaliate with anger. I retaliated with accuracy. Reports were filed. Claims were submitted. Every document she ever twisted became the pathway for consequences she could no longer dodge. The HOA suspended her. Civil actions followed. The systems she had abused finally turned their attention toward the person misusing them. She called it persecution. It was simply accountability wearing its proper name. She learned that when you rely on lies, video is your natural enemy. When you rely on intimidation, witnesses become your undoing. And when you treat neighbors like subjects, eventually one of them decides to fight back correctly. The victory wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. Her house went dark. Her emails stopped. Her clipboard disappeared. No speeches, no lessons, no dramatic closure. Just absence where control used to be. She didn't get the ending she scripted. She got silence, and silence was enough.